Greetings, Bob Luss, the Pond Boss. Hanging out today at American Sort Fish Hatchery outside of Montgomery, Alabama with Sean McNulty.
Good to see you, Bob.
Hey, Sean.
Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, buddy, it's great. You know what? We're going to talk a little bit about feed train largemouth bass. That's what they do here, part of what they do here, and they do it really, really well. So, Sean, let's go take a look at some fish.
All right, let's go feed some bass.
And kind of take us through your process here. Let's start off with the feed. What do you got there?
We get our feed from shredding, and we put a little fish oil on it just to give it a little more flavor, a little more taste.
Yep.
Get the fish interested in it. We bring our fish up at 2 inches, and then we start feeding them a mixture of pelleted feed and krill, and we slowly take the krill out to where they will take just the feed, and this is how we grow all our fish. Anything that's bigger than 2 inches, we feed train, because we can't afford to feed fish off of minnows and bluegill like in your pond.
Yeah.
So this is how we grow them. We get them in tanks to a certain size, and then we take them out to ponds.
So now when you take them from here and they're on feed, you're going to take them out to the fish farm, which is all over the place back here behind us. This is a big bat shed here, and then back across that tree line, there's just literally acres and acres of ponds. So you take these feed train fish, so you feed train them inside in these tanks. We'll walk over there in a minute and look at some of those. Are those feeders proprietary?
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right, so let's walk over here.
We use automatic feeders to keep introducing feed over and over and over again until they're also a little bit shy. You see them run when we come here, so they get used to noises, they get used to people. There's probably 30,000 bass in this tank right now.
These are all, what kind of bass are these?
I believe these are tiger bass.
Okay, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So here you've got, this is the feeder, so you put a really fine feed in that, and then it vibrates and the feed falls down this platform and then falls into the tank, into this vat all the way around.
So they'll get fed every 30 minutes, 24 hours a day. And then we also come through and hand feed 3 times a day to see what's feeding, make sure the sizes are still uniform, because these guys will eat each other as soon as they possibly can.
Yeah, no kidding.
So we have to grade to keep them all the uniform size.
Cannibal.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now, one thing folks are always asking us at Pond Boss, and with my Bob Lusk Outdoors business, is we want some of those F1 tiger bass we've been hearing about. And I know that's trademarked by American Sort Fish Hatchery.
That's right.
Tell folks what an F1 tiger bass is.
So the tiger bass is a cross between the Florida bass and the northern bass. And the Florida bass have the size in their genetics, and the northern bass are more aggressive.
Okay.
And so what we've done over 20 years is taken the most aggressive northern bass that we can find and the fastest growing Florida bass, and that's our brood stock. And that's when we cross them and we get the F1, which is first generation, but it's a tiger bass when it comes from American Sport Fish, because we've been pit tagging, testing the genetics, testing the growth for years to make sure that we have the best fish to make the best cross.
So what you do with your brood fish, now you don't always get them just from here. You get them from known pure strain Florida sources.
Absolutely.
And then you pit tag each fish. And how long will you keep a Florida bass, for example, to use as a brood fish?
Usually 3 to 4 years, but if one's in phenomenal shape and still giving eggs, then we'll still use her.
You know, one of the things people are often concerned about is, and I hear this, is if we buy these F1 bass and we stock them in, are they all brothers and sisters?
Well, you know, anytime you're coming from a hatchery, there is less diversity. But even with tiger bass or northern bass or Florida bass, all of those things, you always need to think about bringing in more genetics later down the road.
Okay, so if we were going to stock some F1 tiger bass in a 6-acre lake,
right,
would you want to come back and buffer those genetics later? Or what's your thought process, your theory behind that, and what time frame? So you stock these gorgeous little bass, give them 3 or 4 years, and then what?
By year 5, I think you really need to look at bringing in, and I like stocking 2-inch bass at 50 to the acre. And there's been studies that show that if you do that 2 years in a row, you can actually see some of that genetics being incorporated. The other thing about the F1 cross, that first generation, is that you get what's called hybrid vigor. And that way, every time you're putting in an F1 in, you're getting the best of the best. So it's always good to add new in. So,
all right, so now, part of the strategies of managing, because when somebody tells me that they want F1s, that tells me they want to grow really huge fish.
That's right, absolutely.
All right, so was one of your strategies to come back in later and stock new F1s?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're not so concerned about stocking some pure strain Floridas
No.
to help reproduce with the existing F1s. You're more interested in, let's bring in and recruit some
That's
new
right.
young F1s.
That's right.
So because you know when your F1s cross with those F1s in that lake 4 or 5 years down the road, you know you're going to lose some of that genetic integrity that you had with that first generation cross.
That's right. And something that you and I have talked a lot about is that when you're harvesting purely by hook and line,
Yep.
you're taking the most aggressive fish out of there and you're leaving the duds behind. So when you're throwing in new F1s, you're bringing back that aggressiveness. And I think, you know, that's something I learned from you that really early on in my career, I didn't think a lot about. You know, we were pushing harvest, but you have to harvest, but you also have to be selective about it. And I think that's something that is really people are going to be focusing on a lot more.
Outstanding. Well, great information. Well, hey, Sean, thanks for letting us come hang out and tell folks about what you got going on here. This is a working fish farm, folks. And I mean, things are going on in here. People are working, a lot of movement, pretty fluid. And Sean, thanks for taking time to show us around American Sport Fish Hatchery in Montgomery, Alabama.
Thank you, Bob.
You bet. See you.